Well, let's talk about that third category where somebody is really lowering oxalates. They're going to start clearing them out of tissues where they've been building up. How low do they have to go? We know 30 milligrams is maintenance. How low do we have to go to start expelling what we've accumulated?
Well, this is where there's absolutely no math that fits every human being on the planet. It seems that whatever plane you're on now, your body's doing the best it can to manage that plane. So if you're eating 1,000 milligrams at breakfast with a green smoothie and then having another 200 with lunch and another 500 with dinner, your body is in the most defensive mode it can be. It's in the sequestration metabolism. So it's trying to limit absorption and it's trying to pull it out of the bloodstream so the blood isn't constantly toxic. So you're really loading up in that state. And sometimes it just takes cutting out the smoothie could be enough. And then the body's like, because it's desperately overloaded. You can think of an old rickety cart of too much fruit on the back of it. It's so over top heavy that the thing is spilling. You're spilling out oxalates anyway. And so you're going to start clearing and spilling oxalates pretty quickly when you lower it. So even though in the science we say this much was the trigger dose and this much is the maintenance dose, in reality, your system has been adapting. Your system is not a petri dish. It's adapting to your situation and it gets used to your regular exposure levels and anticipates that and is trying to adjust as much as it can. So any major change in the amount of oxalates you eat could trigger this clearing process, which can trigger new symptoms and make you feel sick.
Okay, let's take that. Let's go further into that piece. So now we need to be careful when we're clearing. And this is a subjective thing depending on how many oxalates your body is used to. Cutting that down, we're going to begin to clear. Let's take that story further and how we need to be wary to not push that too hard and cause symptoms from clearing too quickly.
Right. And again, the basic process doesn't always play out in each life the way we think of it as sort of this textbook scenario. So even if this doesn't exactly fit you, it doesn't mean it doesn't apply to you. And that's something that's hard for people to wrap their heads around. That's why this is such a frustrating topic to teach and for people to understand. I've literally had people go from a high oxalate diet to a zero oxalate diet because there's this popularity of doing an all meat diet, which has no oxalate in it. So if you're eating just animal foods, you've eliminated down to you. There is such a thing as a zero oxalate diet. That's meat. And sometimes they do fine. They don't notice the clearing illness for months and months or years. A lot of times I've had people come to me in year 3 on carnivore suddenly very sick with what is obviously oxalate illness now. One man interviewed me, I think he said he was now in his 6th year and he's seeing oxalate clearing illness now after 6 years on zero oxalate. So I mentioned those, what I consider kind of exceptions to the fact that the way this plays out is going to be quite individual. Some people are already dumping and spilling before they even start the diet. And it just doesn't make things worse to cut back because they're already so sick. But we want to do everything with as much awareness as possible so we can not let someone be doing this at a level that is dangerous. Too much oxalic acid in the blood disrupts calcium and other electrolytes, can cause heart arrhythmias and hypertension, and it makes you feel like you're having a heart attack or stroke. And you'll end up in the emergency room with an electrolyte crash and they won't know what to do with you. They won't know what's wrong. But we can medicate that, getting some potassium and sodium and calcium in if you realize that you're doing an electrolyte crash because there's too much oxalic acid around. You can get a big inflammatory event that turns on these cytokines, which are quite harmful. And so depending on the situation, you can address that in the short run. Sometimes it's a matter of adding some more oxalate into the diet, and that seems to settle it down. Have 2 bags of tea, make a strong tea, take that, see if that helps, and so on. We can use a little vitamin C. If you're getting a big inflammatory reaction, very small amounts of vitamin C can help the immune system work better and calm down. And we didn't talk about the fact that your immune system is damaged from oxalates after every meal. The immune cells themselves get into a pro-inflammatory damaged state and they become more confused, unable to fight infections and so on. So there's lots of different angles that might play out in each person differently. But fundamentally, if you've gone into low oxalate and you don't feel good, adding back a small amount. And so I have a table in Toxic Superfoods, the book, that's called a dosing table. And it shows you how much, say, how much carrots, if they're boiled or raw or steamed, would give you 20 or 30 milligrams of oxalate, which might be enough to help you feel better. If you've gone too low too fast and you're feeling sick, you can add back in, say, a whole cup of cooked carrots is about 30, I believe, milligrams of oxalate. And sometimes that's now therapeutic medicine to get your system to calm down. Does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, no, and this is important to get into. We'll use that example, the carnivore 6 years and then starting to have symptoms of oxalates, being on a zero oxalate diet, carnivore. So if somebody decides to pump the brakes and have something like carrots, is that typically just a one-time thing? Or somebody in that position like the carnivore who's just hitting that wall at that point 6 years in, is it going to be like carrots every day for the next year to, as they're going through that clearing, to put the brakes on? You know what I'm getting at there? Is this like a
Yeah, I
one-time thing, or
do.
is it something they're going to need to use when that happens over a longer period of time?
Chances are that you're going to figure out that you're going to feel better on a certain amount of oxalate, but the body will get used to your 1 cup of carrots. If you start thinking, I just need my 1 cup of carrots with every dinner, simple solution. The body's like, oh, I know about those 30 milligrams of oxalate at dinner. I know how to not absorb them, and the body will ignore it. So going on and off of them, or, changing the amount is variable. That helps keep everything alert, and you can tell if you're not getting relief, you think you're in this big episode. And the way you can tell you're in a big episode of oxalate clearing is your mood crashes, your energy crashes. Some people will see cloudy urine, which is oxalate crystals and shredded cells from the bladder coming out. They'll see grit in the eyes, tartar on the teeth, gritty stools, diarrhea, skin boils. So some combination of usually some external sign plus feeling awful. You add in the tea, little lemon, some little bits of vitamin C. Usually that can help you feel better. If not, you want to try it again, do some more, and keep upping your dose of oxalate to get it to calm down. You don't have to be afraid of the trigger dose and so on. You want to get yourself out of crisis mode. And it's if you overshoot the maintenance dose that you're trying to get your body to hear the maintenance. So let's maintain, let's not clear. That's the value of understanding trigger and maintenance theory, is that you want to put enough back in to put the body into maintenance mode that tells it to stop clearing the crystals and calm down and relax. It needs a little lunch break from all that hard work it's doing.
So you began this oxalate journey 2009, had your relapse in 2013. We're 10 years later from the relapse. It sounds like you mentioned earlier having still something with your thyroid and oxalates in your spine. What I'm getting at here is, do you find you yourself at this point still need to put on the brakes sometimes? Like, it sounds like you're still clearing. Do you get into positions where you need to put on the brakes and slow that down?
A few weeks back, we had this big, what I call the solstice dump at the full moon. And I had a pretty vicious inflammation in my neck and muscles in the upper back. And I have not really needed to do dosing, as we call it, to handle my symptoms because mostly they're easy now. But that was pretty bad. And I decided what I needed more than anything, because I am very low carb, basically carnivore plus my coconut and some papaya and things like that. I needed to up some carbs to calm the kind of cortisol that goes when you're burning fat and burning too many amino acids for energy. You can lower the whole oxidative stress and the kind of cortisol level in the body by adding some carbs. So in that case, I didn't really add oxalates so much as I added more carbs. So there are times when there's some real finessing to this. But I do keep olives around and happily eat some things that have small amounts of oxalate in them. Absolutely no concern about oxalate triggering or maintenance problems. And that's the beauty of it. Once you know the big ones and you don't care to eat them anymore, you can play with these medium foods and not worry about it too much. But I would say it can be a little tricky to know what's exactly the right remedy. Usually the right remedy is get more minerals like calcium, get citric acid, and alkalize the body. Because when you're in an inflammatory state of clearing and some related symptoms like my muscle pain, there's a certain degree of acidity occurring in this interstitial gel that the cells are living in. So outside of the cell membrane, things get more acidic when there's lots of inflammation, when there's lots of oxalate moving on around. And if we can address that inflammation, or address that acidity rather, that can really bring down the malaise feeling a lot. So that's another advantage of using calcium. It's chalk. Using citric acid, even acetic acid, those become basic in the body. The liver turns citric acid into bicarbonate to a certain degree, and that lowers the acidity in the body, and that helps tremendously. You can use Alka-Seltzer Gold. There's other ways to do alkalinity with bicarbs and so on, but that can be another remedy too. So if it's not working to add 2 bites of sweet potato or a cup of carrots, sometimes what you really need to do is focus on the acidity of the crisis moment sort of thing.
I want to make sure we've covered these additional things when somebody's dumping out oxalates. So calcium, that can be helpful. Citric acid. Did you say acetic acid too?
Probably, yep.
Okay.
To a lesser degree, yes.
And I want to come back to the calcium piece because this is a controversial supplement. A lot of times in the health and wellness space, and you do address this in your book, people are weary of calcium when it's taken as a supplement, not in food, clogging up the arteries. So for people, and myself included, I'm still a little bit weary about this one. Talk about calcium and taking that as a supplement in general, and then again, for somebody who is dumping and wants to have that to help them through that. Is there anything in the science why we should be worried about supplementing with calcium?
Well, to understand calcium, the body only absorbs a certain fraction of what you take in, whether it's a supplement or in food. About 20% is the typical absorption rate of calcium. So a huge fraction of what you eat, 80% of what you eat, is staying around in the digestive tract, which is a real great advantage because that is a binder of oxalate, and that's a great place to bind oxalate. It helps the digestive tract, the colon, participate in oxalate removal from the body. So it's not all just the kidneys, because the kidneys basically have 90% of the burden of oxalate removal. And if your kidneys are worn out from this high oxalate world we're in, it's really advantageous to the body to let the colon help out, and the calcium is there as a binder. So that's the main reason we use it, is it helps the colon help you excrete oxalate. Now, in your cell environment, calcium lives in this extracellular space around the cells, and it's very well controlled inside cells. Cells have the endoplasmic reticulum and other organelles handling and managing oxalate, including mitochondria, help with this. But when a cell gets damaged from something like oxalate being nearby, the membranes no longer control calcium from sneaking into the cells. And so calcium can start leaking into damaged cells, and that's where you get aberrant calcium buildup in the body. Oxalate also follows calcium into the cells, gets in the cells anyway, actually forms within cells from vitamin C, and grabs the calcium that should be in the cells. Because calcium is this critical, what we call a secondary messenger. What it does is it tells the cell what to do. It's the messenger that tells, oh, make some insulin. Oh, bring me some sugar. Give me some more of this. Do this, as a cell. And the endoplasmic reticulum and mitochondria release little tiny blips and little bits of calcium to tell the cell what to do. But when oxalate's around, it grabs the messenger and kills the messenger. And now the cell doesn't know what to do. And the cell on the outside is getting damaged by oxalates and from the inside, and that makes them leaky to calcium. So when the body loses control of calcium and gets calcifications going, some of it's calcium oxalate buildup, it's because something is harming the control of calcium. It's not because you're absorbing too much calcium. The body tries to not absorb calcium it doesn't want. But calcium buildup is a sign of some form of toxicity in the body, not because you're taking too much calcium.
Okay. So just to be clear, taking calcium as a supplement is okay.
It's very safe. There's obviously never agreement across all the studies you pull up, and it often takes more work to find the definitive review papers that kind of broker a piece around the arguing in the literature, where you can pick some random small study and say, see, supplement killed her. When in fact, the literature suggests that there's absolutely no increases in heart attack or other forms of mortality with calcium supplementation, with or without vitamin D. But yeah, the calcium, if you're willing to listen to the whole discussion and not freak out about a few studies that suggest supplements are bad, you can be pretty relaxed about taking calcium, and I would certainly be. I'd still take calcium. Calcium citrate doesn't agree with me necessarily because I'm prone to constipation. So I usually take calcium pyruvate, but I still take calcium 3 times a day.
If you enjoyed that clip, press here for the full episode. I'll see you over there.
People are literally buying these massive clamshell boxes of spinach and using half pound or more of spinach every day. That is really toxic. I was looking back at this thing that I really love. I wanted to share this with you.